We are previewing the Clemson football season for 2023, and in this video, we're specifically talking about the offense. So it is interesting because they did make a big improvement from 2021 when they were the 82nd best offense in terms of yards per game at just 361 to last year where they jumped to 48th. Obviously not great, certainly not the best is the standard bar that is set, but it's 49 more yards per game, so that was a big jump. First half of the year, they were playing Furman, Louisiana Tech, Wake Forest, and kind of padded those stats. But nonetheless, especially in the Wake Forest game, they looked like a very competent offense. But as the year wore on, that faded. It really happened in the Syracuse game when DJ sort of lost it, and he went back to the quarterback we saw in 2021. And the play calling also seemed to struggle as they lost trust in the quarterback. As DJ himself said, they also started turtling as an offense. And what was even more frustrating than that was they would go away from what was working. I remember very specifically South Carolina game. South Carolina was stacking the box. They were giving them one-on-one on the outside. But Clemson didn't have the receivers to beat South Carolina's good cornerbacks, and they didn't have the quarterback to do it either. So South Carolina was begging them to play into their weakness, even though Shipley was still picking up yards against a stacked box. So they threw the ball, and as soon as they did it, they threw it deep down it was the right sideline. Based on the direction the offense was going, it was intercepted. And then later in the game, you saw E.J. Williams comes onto the field, runs a slant, immediately drops it. Playing to their weaknesses, passing to wide receivers. That was the weakness last year, and it all sort of devolved. But then what was so fascinating is at the very end of the year, DJ really hit his low point against UNC, couldn't throw, little behind the line of scrimmage type passes. Cade comes in and all of the problems are solved. And so I thought, maybe my perspective was wrong. Maybe it's not about the wide receivers. It really is just the quarterback. Cade looks like a superstar. But then against Tennessee, he struggled a bit. So where does that leave us? Well, the good thing is we have kind of a fresh start. New quarterback, new offensive coordinator. Garrett Riley, his TCU team was number one in the country in plays of 50-plus yards. Clemson was ranked in the 70s. So huge difference in explosiveness. In college football, and football in general, but especially in college football, it's not reasonable to rely on an offensive line to never have a false start, a quarterback to never miss a throw, or a wide receiver to never drop one, and put together 12, 13 play drives and march down the field, especially if you're not pounding it up the gut every time, kind of like the classic Alabama teams did. So getting more explosive is critical. It's the number one thing this offense needs to do. So I'm thinking about what guys I'm excited about, what guys I'm worried about, or what positions and groups. I think this offensive line is one to be excited about. It sounds like, there was talk about shifting guys around, moving Marcus Tate, but the latest I've heard is that it's a battle between Blake Miller and Tristan Lee, with Tristan Lee being the favorite for left tackle and the 4 other spots staying the same. That's a lot of continuity, and they've got some depth behind them with guys like Mitchell Mays who can play. So this will be one of the deepest Clemson offensive lines in a while. That means a guy goes down, the whole thing doesn't fall apart. Kind of like it did in 2021. We had some guys go down. They didn't have a starting center. They started shifting guys around, and everything kind of went haywire. Seems like they could avoid that. So I think I'm not necessarily saying they're going to plow guys over, but this should be one of the better Clemson offensive lines. Certainly should be the best one since 2019. Obviously, the running back duo is the strength of the offense. Probably the strongest spot on the offense is Shipley and Maffa. I think Maffa, he led the offense, the entire offense, not just running backs, and PFF grade. He's not necessarily a burner who's going to rip off, 50-yard runs, but he's a really good running back in the same vein as Shipley. So I think you see Shipley still the number one back, but perhaps a somewhat more even split, and that will allow them to get Shipley more touches in the passing game. A new offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, said that he wants Shipley. He wants to use him in some new ways, in a lot of different ways. So I would expect to see him more in the passing game so that they can give Maffa more touches as a running back. So I think that's another group to be excited about. Obviously, the big wild card is quarterback. Cade Klubnik, I feel confident in saying he'll be an upgrade. Will he be, Drake May, Jordan Travis, you got to put them 1-2. But could he be the third best quarterback in the ACC? I think it's reasonable. I think it's feasible. This is a great quarterback league. I like Brendan Armstrong a lot, reuniting with Robert Anae and NC State, and there's a couple others. But I think Cade should be a big upgrade at quarterback. So looking at those three positions, you feel pretty good about it. To me, the big question is wide receiver. I don't think they have to be elite, but they have to be a lot better. They've been frankly bad for at least the last 2 years. Joan Gatto was actually the highest PFF rated wide receiver. He was a good blocker on the perimeter, so they lose that. But Antonio Williams was the best pass catcher and playmaker, and he's back for a sophomore year. Really need him to have a sophomore surge, not slump. That's critical. He's the star of that wide receiver group, but need some of these other guys to step up. There's been a lot of talk about Adam Randall. I had Drew Schneider on the show recently, and he was very excited about what Randall could do. You don't know how hurt he was last year. So big recruit, wasn't healthy last year, but he didn't show us flashes. Now, Bo Collins, he showed us flashes, so we know he can do it, but he hasn't done it for more than perhaps 5 games at a time. We saw it kind of towards the end of his freshman year. I remember the road game at Louisville in 2021, I believe it was, and he looked like a star. But it didn't last but a couple games. Then start off of this season or of last season, 2022. Those Georgia Tech, some of those early games, seems like, okay, he's the guy. And then he sort of faded away. He hurt his shoulder and kind of disappeared from relevance. So if one of them could be a legit number one kind of outside playmaker, go up and get at wide receiver, and Antonio Williams could be a guy who moves between the slot and kind of gets put in motion and is used creatively, I think the wide receiver group could be just fine. Those are not guarantees. It's not a guarantee that anyone on the outside is going to step up. You need at least one, probably two, of Bo Collins, Adam Randall, and redshirt freshman Cole Turner to step up. You need that deep threat. I think Antonio Williams could have a season kind of like Artavis Scott in 2015, push for 1,000 yards. I don't think there is a 1,000-yard receiver on this team, but I think between a good stretch from Adam Randall, a good stretch from Bo Collins, those two could combine for over 1,000 and make sure that Clemson always has at least one guy on the outside playing well. I think Cole Turner is a guy who goes off here and there as a deep threat, but maybe isn't quite consistent. He's not going to average 70 yards per game and hit something like that consistently, but maybe he goes off here and there. The other guys to think about, Brandon Spector. I know a lot of people are down on him, but I think he could be a guy who, if Bo Collins or Adam Randall or both are hurt, he plays the slot. You move Antonio around. I think that perhaps he could have better chemistry with Cade Klubnik than he did with DJ. And then Troy Stellato is a guy we've been waiting to come around. He's just been hurt. I don't know that you count on him for anything. Will Taylor is now focused on baseball exclusively. So it's really, if Stellato's not healthy, it's Spector and Antonio Williams in the slot. That's pretty much it. So they've got to stay healthy. If you believe in this wide receiver group, you should pick Clemson to make the playoff. You should pick this offense to, jump from 48th to 28th or better, jump 20 spots, maybe more. If you believe in this group, the rest of the offense is there. I look at the running backs. Maffa had 515 yards. I think he could add another perhaps 300. Shipley had 1,182. Maybe he gets a few fewer carries, but still nets out similar yardage. That puts the combo there right under 2,000. The other spot is tight end, where I think, Brenning Stool was not as good of a blocker as Davis Allen was, but I think he's ready to ascend and be a dynamic pass catcher. Another guy, if Bo Collins and Adam Randall don't step up, you put him basically out wide. Your 4 wide sets, your 4 wide receiver sets are really him as a wide receiver, or even 2 wide receivers and two running backs with him as a tight end, or even 2 tight ends. I think one thing that's great is we can trust Garrett Riley to do what's working and get the ball to the best players. I think that's the biggest difference that has me so optimistic. Last year, again, pass plays to wide receivers with a quarterback who's struggling and a wide receiver group who's struggling and banged up on top of that. I think this year they force the issue with a run when it's working and don't just take what the defense gives them unless you're actually stopping the run. I think they use the tight ends more. We saw Streeter do that, tight ends over the middle of the field at times. I was excited for such a difference from Tony Elliott 2021, and then they'd get away from it for seemingly no reason. So I think the offensive coordinator change is huge. I think the offense has a chance to take a big jump. I still don't think they'll be as good as the defense. I think the defense could be top 5 defense in yards per play. I don't know that the offense is there yet. They don't have a T. Higgins, Sammy Watkins guy. And for as much as I love Shipley and Maffa, their yards per carry, they're not like Kendre Miller from TCU last year, averaged 7.3 yards per carry, breaking off big plays. Can they get to that with Garrett Riley now running no longer TCU, but Clemson's offense? I don't know if they have the top end speed. If they could push it up just that half step, if Collins, Randall, if they could both step up, or at least one of them, or perhaps Cole Turner, this could be an elite offense. I'd say they take a big jump about 20 spots from about 48th to 28th and make this a playoff team. I don't know that they quite get to elite, but I think you see the difference in quarterback. I think you see the difference in offensive coordinator. I think the wide receivers are better. And I think you got 2 great running backs. So a lot to be excited for Clemson football and this offense in particular. We won't see it for a little bit, but we'll get Duke on Labor Day. So a lot to look forward to. Hey, again, if you're not subscribed to this channel, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and definitely like this video. It really helps, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. Go Tigers.